right, I think I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen and we can get started. Before we get going, my name is Sarah Walz and I work for the city of Iowa City in transportation planning. Also work for the MPO of Johnson County, also doing transportation planning. And some of my colleagues are here today: Emily Bothell, Frank Waseth, and Hannah Neal, who are also do the same. So we'll be here to explain things and answer questions. We also have some of our engineering staff will be available to answer questions. And I'm just going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Ooh, here we go. Can you all see that? Is that up?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're going to do is just provide some update on Iowa City's bicycle master plan. Most of you probably know that we adopted the plan in the fall of 2017. Things really didn't start rolling really until 2019, and that has to do with the Iowa City's budget process and getting things on the capital improvements plan. We did have some small improvements that first year, but things really took off in 2019. And then, as you'll see, as we're going on, COVID and a lot of the related issues with both the pandemic and then supply chain issues have affected things, but we're moving on, we're onward, and we're doing a lot of things this year. So I'm just going to guide you through some of that. For those of you who aren't familiar, I thought it might be a little bit helpful if I went through some sort of nomenclature to explain how we classify things and where you'll find certain facilities or where to anticipate them. And so the first couple of things I have are the off-street system, our trails, and our side paths. When we do surveys, and one of the most recently done surveys was done just around the time of the bicycle master plan through our long range transportation plan, about 94% of people who responded to that survey said that these are the facilities that they feel most comfortable on: trails and side paths. Trails are those systems of wide 8 to 10 foot paths typically that they don't follow the roadway. They're located off-road. They normally follow floodplains, waterways, utility corridors. In some of our newer subdivisions, they're planned ahead and they're required to build some bike trails. So these go in where we have long, often linear swaths or parcels of land that are uninterrupted, that we can get a trail in on. So that's why you typically see the trails, again, along the waterways, but on the margins of the community, because that's where we're able to get those long swaths of land. The older parts of the community are really parceled up in a way that we just can't put the parcels together to get the trail system. And that's something that people often comment on when we ask for input, like, let's have a trail downtown. And the issue is that it's just not possible to get, we can't get the parcels together to do that. So that's why those are the way they are. So the trail system, again, pretty much very little conflict with on-street traffic. The side path is kind of the next best thing. And so those are actually within the street right of way, meaning that public property, they're separate from the street. Some people call them wide sidewalks, 8 to 10 feet, again, a multi-use trail. We now, and for the past many years, have required side paths as we reconstruct or construct new arterial streets and extensions onto those streets. We will have side paths on one side. And along our arterial streets, there are limitations on how frequently you can have street intersections, and we have some restrictions on driveway access. And so again, that means that there's less conflict with cars. You're coming across cars less frequently. And again, because of this, as we get closer to the downtown area, closer to developed areas, older developed areas of town, getting those uninterrupted paths is a little bit harder. Then the next order is bike lanes. And again, in our surveys, about 67% of people indicated that they feel comfortable riding on street if there are bike lanes. And again, as we move forward with the plan, when we are making improvements to our arterial and some collector streets, where the pavement width allows, and that is the thing that sort of binds us, we will get bike lanes. We will get the widest bike facility we can get. And so where we can, we will get a buffered bike lane, which is the bike lane with a hashed or a double line, as you're seeing in that photo there, of a buffer from traffic. Our bicycle advisory committee has asked for, when we have that space, to sort of give more of the space to the lane than the buffer, because we know as you get closer to the curb, and you can even see in that picture, you know, you have leaves, you have debris, other issues, that part of the street just is a magnet for problems. So to give the bicyclists more room to maneuver. The next thing we have are shared lane markings and sharrows. These are one of our more controversial facilities, if you can call them that. People sort of love or hate sharrows. It is a shared lane marking, so it's marking the presence of the bicyclists in that shared lane. If you look at the literature on sharrows, there's many reasons. They serve many purposes. I think the most intuitive, both for bicyclists and for motorists, is that they tell people bicycles are going to be present here. So I think for less experienced bicyclists, they make them feel welcome. And for motorists, it's just an awareness that a bicyclist is likely to be there. Don't be surprised by one. Along with it, we have sharrows where there is not pavement width. We may have sharrows where there is not pavement width for a bike lane, or other areas sort of guiding between facilities. In some areas, with or without the sharrow, you might also see a bicyclist may use full lane sign. We're just starting to introduce those. You'll see them in a few areas around town as we're improving corridors, where we see there's a definite, pinch point where it's really in the best interest of the bicyclist to take to that lane and for the motorist to wait. We will put those signs up. Of course, bicyclists have the right to do that anywhere, but we really want to call out those areas where people really need to be anticipating that, and where bicyclists really need to feel that they have the permission to do that. Another feature that we've added recently is the bicycle turn boxes. We have these at the intersections of Jefferson and Dodge and Market and Governor, and also the two-step turn lane or turn box down at Madison. And I think that one in particular is especially helpful for people, as you know, if you're riding on Burlington Street, a lot of experienced bicyclists will feel comfortable moving across lanes to get in that left lane to do a left turn lane. Less experienced bicyclists, or bicyclists that aren't real comfortable in a lot of traffic, would prefer to do that in two steps. And this just allows them to do it, to get in front of the stop traffic and prepare for that, to make that turn in two steps. What these bicycle boxes do is they work, their real purpose is to be in areas where we have a lot of pedestrian, bicycle, and motor vehicle traffic. And they allow sort of a hierarchy of order, giving the bicyclists their space to prepare for the change of the light, give the pedestrian their space and the motorists their space, so that there are fewer conflicts. The pedestrians and the bicyclists get to move through the area first, and then the motorist follows. And then we have our bikeways, and in some places these are called bike boulevards. People were really confused by the bike boulevard terminology, so we went with bikeways. You'll see the blue sign there that these are being marked with, and these are for the most part being marked on routes that have existed in Iowa City for a long time, that have been popular with bicyclists. We have them marked. We've marked them on our metro area trails map for many years. These provide great connections between important destinations, connections to trails and bike paths. And so what we're sort of introducing the bikeway aspect, the labeling of it, and the wayfinding and some other improvements as we're adding features in certain areas like trail extensions or bike lanes. Then we will be putting in those bikeways, and I'll kind of go over that as we look at the map of projects as we're going along. So as I said earlier, things really got rolling in 2019, and I hope this is clear for you. It's not as clear as I would like on my screen, but you can see some of the things that we've added since the plan was adopted. That side path on Highway 1 between Sunset and Melrose, which is a really excellent way to get out to the far west side of Iowa City. And then the Willow Creek connector that takes you, I think it's along Willow Creek Court up to Willow Creek Park. The Clinton Street 4 to 3 lane conversion that was originally done before pavement improvement. And I know some people had concerns about that, but then in the subsequent year, we came through with the pavement improvement, and now those bike lanes are much nicer. Clinton Street, you know, is probably one of our most multi-use streets. We have the bus system on there. We have cars, lots and lots of pedestrians, bicyclists. So that was a delicate balance of serving the needs of all the different users. One thing I will mention with that, and we can talk about this later, is, you know, there has been some concern, especially during the pandemic, since the pandemic, of motorists parking in the bike lane. And a lot of this has been delivery drivers. And this is one of those streets where there is that difficult balance. We want our bricks and mortar businesses to stay in business. We had all kinds of new delivery services, Lyft, Grubhub, Chomp, lots of others coming in, and we're working through that. That was a big change, and I know people found that frustrating, but we're working through it. Bike lanes on Foster Road, from North Dubuque Street to Prairie du Chien Road, the Dodge Street bike lanes as far south from Summit Street to Burlington, and Governor Street bike lanes. Those are buffered bike lanes. Mormon Trek, the 4 to 3 lane conversion, that was something that was really not so much for bicyclists as it was a safety improvement to the road. And then we reassigned that space to bicyclists, but bicyclists also have the option of the side path on Mormon Trek. And then a couple of bikeways, the Dewey Street Brown bike lane that takes you from the north end of the Governor Street bike lane through some other streets where the road narrows up to Prairie du Chien and to the wide side path that runs along North Dodge. And an improvement on Riverside Drive. If you've been there at Myrtle Street, you know, you are familiar with the new traffic light that's there, and also the pedestrian refuge island that makes it easier to cross. And then that Myrtle Green bikeway allows a lower stress option for getting up that hill to Benton Street. And then in 2020, we extended the Dodge Street bike lanes as far south as Kirkwood, got the Burlington Street bike lanes between Madison and Riverside, and then the extension of McAllister Road, again, a new section of arterial street. So that has new buffered bike lanes and the side path. In 2021, and here you're seeing the beginning of that impact from COVID and supply chains. Muscatine Avenue, we did get shared lane markings along a portion of that, and we can talk about that later. And then bike lanes from Burlington to Evans Street, and then again Sharrows to guide people over to the Market and Jefferson bike lanes. And then a series of bikeways that we introduced that were intended to mostly to help students get to Southeast Junior High from the east side, and also to City High, and then to connect those east side neighborhoods with the Iowa River Corridor Trail and the Riverfront Crossings Park. And now this year, 2022 and 2023, we're looking at a whole series of improvements, and I will go through these on the map. And what you're seeing there, that image, of course, is of the buffered bike lane. I believe that's on Governor Street, I think, Governor Dodge. So in 2022, you'll be seeing the Madison Street bike lanes coming in. Those start a little bit south of Burlington Street and then continue over to Jefferson Street. You know, another area that's very busy with bus traffic, automobile, and pedestrian traffic, as well as bicycling. But we've been waiting for these. These have been a bit delayed because there were some improvements that the university was doing along Madison Street. Now that those improvements are complete, the city can go forward with bike lanes. Then Market and Jefferson Street will get buffered bike lanes. Those will be extended from Madison Street all the way up to Governor Street. And those will be buffered bike lanes. So that will give a little more space. And I think people will be happy to see improvements, especially to the Market Street bike lane, which we've known has been less than comfortable for some time. And we're going to get that improved. Rochester bike lanes, I've marked that on there. Those Rochester Street, if you've been in Rochester, you know that a lot of work is going on there. We'll see those probably in 2023. The bike lanes themselves will be from First Avenue to around where the Ralston Creek Bridge is. From there down, there will be to the west, I should say, there will be shared lane markings, and then sort of a slip bike lane that guides you down to Market Street. Then on the west side at Benton Street, standard bike lanes from the end of that Myrtle Greenwood bikeway that I spoke about, and all the way west to Mormon Trek. And that will just be a standard bike lane. That is what the pavement width allows. But I wanted to note that the future in this area, we do have in the plan future bike lanes on Sunset Street, and that would be south of Benton, this part of Sunset Street. And in the future in University Heights, this portion of Melrose that does not have bike lanes, University Heights has it in their plan in the next several years with improvements to Melrose Street to get bike lanes along that portion of Melrose. So that's outside of Iowa City. So that next step is with University Heights, and they've made it a priority. Then if we go to south side of Iowa City, we're really seeing a lot of improvements here because there are many important destinations in the south side. And it was a desire of the bicycle master plan. We took a look at equity issues and things like that. And so facilities are really coming along in the south side. So this year we will see a 4 to 3 lane conversion on Keokuk Street, south of the highway. So that will get bike lanes. So from the highway down to Sandusky, and then so that's in this area. And then on Southgate Avenue connecting over to Gilbert. There will also be a bikeway that follows along Sandusky down into the park and Burns Avenue, and then the Weatherby Lakeside bikeway will come in. The Highway 6 trail will get started this year, but probably not finished till next year. That runs from Hines Road, this easternmost section. Hines Road, that's the limit of our right of way within city limits. The rest is in the county, and that will extend to Fair Meadows. This portion is coming before this next portion, which is scheduled for 2025-26. This portion is really to help, especially students in those far southeastern neighborhoods, the mobile home parks and elsewhere, get over to Southeast Junior High and City High. So that's why that segment is coming in first. Then what to look forward in that area when this east-west portion of the Sycamore Street is improved, that in several years in the future will also have, like other arterial streets, the side path and buffered bike lanes. And then going back to the far east side, again, I have these Rochester bike lanes marked, but also right now, if you've been out in the far east side, American Legion Road is being extended, again, with the buffered bike lanes and side path. Possibly a future bike lanes on Washington Street. And we'd love to hear from people about that. And then when Taft Avenue on the far east side comes in, that will come in with bike lanes and a side path as well. And I just wanted, even though this is something that's in Coralville, it was a Coralville project. It's a really important one, I think, for both communities, and both communities plan these things together. So if you haven't been, you should check out along the trail on Rocky Shore Drive. You can now hop on a new trail segment that's been open since last fall that runs on the north side of the Crandick Railroad. That'll guide you right over into the riverfront section in the Iowa River Landing in Coralville. You can also, take the path across the dam into the peninsula neighborhood. But the other neat thing you'll be able to do, is to go under First Avenue and under 2nd Street Highway 6 and under the railroad and connect into the Clear Creek Trail. So we're really starting to see this metro-wide network of trails really build out in a way that is going to allow people to ride a long way without ever having to be on street, or only having to be on low volume streets. And that's what this next slide is about. I just wanted to make anyone who isn't aware. So from that slide I showed you last time, the last slide of this area, this will connect you into the Clear Creek Trail. And coming in 2025, you'll be able to pop under the interstates, connect into Tiffin. That's in just a couple of years. And then you'll be able to ride from Tiffin all the way out to Kent Park. So this really opens up a lot of opportunity for tourism, and then just great opportunities for people from Iowa City to ride well out into the county and to connect people from Tiffin and other areas into Iowa City and Coralville. And that's sort of a map of the whole Iowa City area, sort of showing you how those different features are coming together. So I think I'll pause right now so that if people have questions about any of these features, we can answer questions about them, or if you've ridden on any of these facilities, if you have thoughts or anything you wanted to share. And I can get out of screen sharing, I think. Stop sharing. Do you have anything in the chat?
We do not.
Well, feel free to type anything in there. We of course want your feedback on any of these facilities. Things can be taken further over time, but some of these facilities are more complicated than others. Like I said, balancing the needs of all the different users, but we certainly want to hear from people. And I think I was right here. Hang on. Okay.
Sarah, we do have one comment from Liz.
Sure.
She says, really love the new trail connector along the Iowa River to the IRL. So much better than riding on the strip. Was great for the co-op to co-op ride last week.
Yeah, it really was. A lot of families and folks with young kids did that ride. So that was really nice. And it's a really lovely ride. I took it myself the other day. I had to go over to Iowa, the University of Iowa Sports Medicine Clinic, and I went that way, and it was beautiful and very easy, and lots of other people were riding it. Another part of the bicycle master plan that maybe gets less public attention is the updates that we've made to some of the bicycle regulations. So I'll just familiarize you with these. And these are things that other communities in the metro area are looking at as well. So we allow riding two abreast, so people can ride side by side two abreast in the bike lane. That's fine. Lane position regulations, those were updated some time ago. You do not have to ride as far to the right as humanly possible. You just need to be in the right lane, or in the lane where you need to be. So if you're turning left, you're in the left lane. And that's something we really need to encourage people to do, because you don't want to turn left out of the right side of the lane. We updated some of the requirements for rear lights and reflectors to make those consistent. We updated language so that e-bikes and other devices are allowed in the bike lanes and on trails. And we are seeing more things like the stand-up scooters and the electronic, I'm sure I'm using the wrong word, skateboards in the bike lanes, and they do have a right to be there. We also now have a dooring regulation for people have to be more alert when opening doors because they can strike bicyclists. We've also recently updated our bicycle parking standards in Iowa City to reflect the APBP guidelines. That's the, I'm going to get this wrong, Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals, I believe. And those are sort of the gold standard of bicycle parking. So Iowa City has just updated those regulations. I know some of the other communities in the metro are also updating theirs. So for new construction and for some zoning changes and changes of use, they will be required to bring their bicycle parking up to standard. We still do not have a mechanism for people with really old bike parking to change those. In the future, we can look at other ways to do that. One of the really nice things is one of our local groups, Bike Iowa City, has a special bicycle friendly program, and they are really encouraging businesses to update their bicycle parking voluntarily. And so we hope folks do that. Another thing, increasing the penalties for parking in the bike lane. And again, that's sort of comes out of this struggle for space that we've seen in some areas, and people using the bike lane illegally to park cars. Another area, education and encouragement. We're trying to do more things that can be shared easily on social media. One of the things is our Bike Shorts video series that we do to encourage people to bike wisely and safely, to obey the law, give tips on safe bicycling, things like that. We also now have rules of the road brochures in 6 different languages. The bicycle friendly driver program, this is something that started with Iowa City Transit. We've provided this to Johnson County Seats. Coralville Transit is about to go through this, and we hope in the future it can be extended to other businesses and organizations that have people that are driving as part of their work. And it makes people aware of what bicycle behaviors are, what things make bicyclists uncomfortable, how best to pass bicyclists, things like that. And so that's a helpful thing. Of course, our metro area trails maps, we just have new ones that came out. We do those every year. Expanding bicycle programs, Iowa City's Parks and Recreation and the recreation departments of our other neighboring communities have more bicycle programs available. And also our local bicycle groups, the Iowa City Bicycle Library, Bicyclists of Iowa City, and some of our local shops have all kinds of activities. And that's really for every level of bicyclists. Installation of bike repair stations, we're seeing more and more of those in our city parks. And then for anyone who's not already aware, the real hub of bicycle information that we're grateful for is bikeiowacity.com. And they have a social media presence as well. It's really the go-to place for bicycle information. You can also find bicycle information on the MPO's website. If you go to the very bottom of the page on the left side, there's a bicycle resources tab, and we have a lot of information there. But Bike Iowa City, it's updated all the time, year-round events, lots of links to our information and information from other communities and other groups about rides and routes to take. So really want to commend them for that. Then evaluation, this is something that's just starting to take place. And we get questions from people all the time, like, you put a new bike lane in, how many new riders do you have? And it's really hard. Just a single bike lane isn't maybe going to attract a measurable number of new riders, but as we are building out this network and there's more intersection between bike lanes and trails and things like that, we'll see the numbers change. And so there's a number of different ways that we are counting that information. So we now include, as part of our work, we evaluate traffic at all kinds of intersections throughout Iowa City and the metro. And we include bicycle counts in that. So those are being picked up that way at all those major intersections. We're now looking at Strava Metro and just kind of learning how to use that to supplement our counts. And that's, for people who don't know, that is an app that a lot of bicyclists, not all, but many recreational and fitness riders use the app. And so that's a good supplement for us to be aware of where people are riding, and will allow us to see what measurable differences in ridership there are in some of those new facilities. We also have our trail counter program, and some of you might know that we're counting really intensively this year along with the county along the Clear Creek Trail and the Iowa River Corridor Trail. And then, of course, collision studies. Those areas where there are problems for bicyclists, we evaluate those. And so questions and concerns, if we don't get to something during this meeting, and I hope people do have some questions and things they want to share during this meeting, you can always email me. That's my email there. And I also want to encourage people, if you encounter problems, either along a bike lane on the street or a side path or a trail. So for example, a downed limb, somebody parking in the bike lane, something else that concerns you. The IC Gov Express is really good here in Iowa City. And what that'll do is get your concern forwarded to the people who can answer it right away. If you email me, you might be waiting longer because I may or may not be in the office or may not be checking email, but IC Gov Express tends to get forwarded along immediately with follow-up and everything. So so please use that. And as I've noted on there, for bike lanes, once you get on there and you're registering a report, bike lanes are on the streets, so look under streets. Trails are under the parks in the scroll down menu. But even if you go under miscellaneous, it'll get to the right person. And then also metro-wide. So if you're outside of Iowa City, you can go onto the MPO homepage, and under our resources, you can get to a bicycle, a citizen bicycle concern report. And you can let us know, and then we will contact that other community and let them know that there's an issue along one of their trails or side paths. So I'm going to get out of sharing.
Sarah, we have a comment and a couple questions.
Great.
So the comment is, as both a cyclist and driver, the Mormon Trek road diet is great. The reduction to 2 lanes has improved traffic flows despite people's fears.
That's great. That's what it was meant to do.
And then going to the first question, are there any regulations or guidelines for motorized vehicles, e-bikes, scooters, or even just very fast non-motorized bikes to modify their speed when encountering pedestrians on trails?
The only regulation that there is in the code, bicyclists and other users are required to yield to pedestrians. And I forget the exact language, but it's when operating on those multi-use facilities to operate at a prudent speed. It's hard to define what that is. And because most people, it's a difficult thing to measure. And so I'm sure it is something. It is one of those things that as more and more e-bikes take to the trails and the streets, I'm sure we will have to make adjustments, but that's the language that we have in place at this time.
And this may be an opportunity for us to provide some education in our bike shorts videos or something similar. Yeah.
And Emily and I were also talking about potentially doing a Zoom sometime this summer on e-bikes, because we were getting to know people who are adopting e-bikes for a lot of different reasons. And we just, they are a more expensive option. And so, maybe doing a Zoom so that we could, have an opportunity for people to ask, questions and answers about what kind of e-bikes and how they work for different, some people are carting kids around, some people are carting large, heavy cargo around, and some people are just out taking to the trails. And so I think a lot of people are interested in that, especially, with gas prices going up. So we're talking about doing that sometime in the future this summer. And so certainly if one of you have an e-bike or you have something you'd like us to cover, please let us know, because we do want these sessions to be useful.
Okay. So the next question is, has any thought been given to, sorry, my chat moved. Has any thought been given to improving pedestrian and cyclist accommodations during construction and detours? For example, the current construction of the traffic circle at Scott and First forces everyone into the busy motorist lanes.
Yeah. And maybe I'll ask if one of our engineers could speak to this. Jason or Scott?
Yeah, I can try and field this one. So typically, yes, we do try and accommodate bicyclists and pedestrians throughout construction. Obviously, for reconstruction projects, it's a bit challenging because you're trying to temporarily maintain travel areas as well as reconstructing either streets or, in this case, an intersection. Most times we'll require at least one sidewalk and limited crossings be maintained at all times. This one was a little bit more challenging just because you kind of have an intersection that doesn't have a lot of connectivity around it. So I think this one or that example is one that's a little bit even more challenging than usual, but it's definitely something we consider, and we try and maintain it as much as possible, but that doesn't always mean we're able to do as much as we'd like.
So I think a good example of where it has been accommodated is the replacement of the Second Avenue Bridge, sort of down near the Hy-Vee on First Avenue, where there is a route marked out to go around that. And just so that people know when those, something like that, that route. The other thing is, I think I'm correct, Jason, that for the pedestrian route, it needs to be handicapped accessible. So we can't route people in a place where there isn't an alternative sidewalk and curb cuts and things like that. Am I correct?
Correct.
Were there other questions, Emily?
No other questions. Just another comment elaborating off of what we had talked about in terms of educating walkers as well as a cyclist. It's a problem when people walk on one side of the trail and then their dog is on the other, and the leash stretches across the trail. Also problems with off-leash dogs.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe we could think about a short educational video or something.
Yeah. That is one of the things with a multi-use facility. It is, again, one of the challenges. Were there any other questions?
No other questions, no.
Jason, I wonder, I hate to spring one on you. The intersection of Highway 6 and Gilbert Street, there have been questions over the years because the underpass on the Iowa River Corridor Trail frequently gets flooded out. And then people want to make a simple cross on the west side of Gilbert Street. Is there a plan to improve that crossing there in the next couple of years?
So that's one that we've noted and will be added next time we do work at that intersection. We don't really have anything specifically planned to that. The challenge that's there is once you start touching pedestrian crossings at an intersection, it has a tendency to grow in scope to make sure once you touch one ramp, then you need to touch the crossing, and then it's the other ramp, and it just kind of grows like that. So it's definitely something we're aware of. We're looking for opportunities to work that into a project. We don't have anything specifically planned at this point, but it's definitely something that we'll include the next time we have an opportunity at that intersection.
And I think one other interesting thing while we're waiting to see if anybody else has questions, I think one of interesting thing I was talking about with the engineers this morning is, when you say, we said some of these things have been delayed, due to supply chain issues and things like that. The engineers were sharing with me this morning, they're having trouble getting paint. And so maybe Jason or Scott, if you could kind of talk about some of those issues that you're facing, because it seems like, when we say we're waiting for a bike lane, it's like, well, what's the supply chain issue? It's just paint, but what's kind of going on with engineering and street improvements in general? I know you've talked about bids and things like that. I think it would be helpful for people to know a little bit more about that.
Yeah, probably the two biggest categories of issues we're having right now are being able to get materials and get lead times, or the extended lead times for materials, and then bid prices. And we've seen projects coming in. It's not uncommon for some projects to come in 25% or more over kind of what our estimate was, especially here in the last few months. I think as people were trying to figure out just how far inflation was going, and the uncertainty of supply chain issues, as we work that into our estimates. So that's been a challenge. The challenge that's there is, when we do bid these prices or bid these projects, we have costs in mind. As they come in a lot higher, we have to kind of regroup and figure out if there's ways that we can help bring those costs more in line with what we have for funding. And so that, when we rebid a project, especially a formal project, typically that's a several month delay in getting it back out on the street for bids and being able to move forward with it. So that has real impacts on our schedule. Supply chain issues, we're certainly not alone there, but it's impacted our projects as well. I know we were talking about it, I think yesterday, that our streets division is still not gotten their paint for this year that they had ordered last year. So I know we've seen one sheet I had seen the other day that there was some material that was in stock, but they said if it was out of stock when they tried to fill your order, that the lead time was 52 weeks. So
Oh,
and
wow.
we're talking months or even years until they'll guarantee that will be delivered. And so, I think from a contractor standpoint, there's that challenge of how do I guarantee I'm going to build this project if I can't guarantee I'm going to get the materials to do it. And so it's all kind of interconnected and interrelated, and we're all trying to work through that kind of together. And so we are trying to keep things moving forward, but sometimes there's only so much we can do on our end.
And then Jason, when a project comes in above bid, like, is there a threshold at which where it's over, where you have to rebid it, where like you can't accept the bid?
For us, that threshold is typically if we only receive one bid and it's 25% over our estimate, then we need to rebid that by our purchasing policy. Beyond that, it really becomes sort of a discussion. If we get a number of bids and they're all really high, it kind of becomes that discussion of are there ways that we can make some changes to the project, whether it's phasing or lengthening the timeline or whatever it might be to help bring those costs down. Or is it just something where if we want to do the project, this is what it costs now, and are we able to come up with the funding to do it? And so it depends a little bit on the situation, but those are some of the discussions we have to have when they come in high.
And then are you seeing like a big change in the cost of pavement or asphalt? Like, are those material costs changing a lot?
We've seen some increase there. I don't know that those are quite as much as other materials. The other thing that plays into is just the cost of fuel. And so, as people are having to truck either material into the site, or if it's just, trucking stuff various locations, that adds up in a hurry. And so as fuel prices have gone up quite a bit, we've seen that passed along on our projects as well.
Sarah, we had another question. Are there any plans to add bikes may use full lane signs anywhere? And I know that we do have a couple locations, right?
Yeah, we do have bikes. I'll just off the top of my head, try to recall a few. The transition around where Jefferson becomes Glendale, we have bikes may use full lanes there. I believe we have them on the Myrtle Street Hill. I know we have them. I'm trying to remember what we're doing, Liz, is as projects come in, and whether it's a bikeway or a bike lane or something out where there's then we look in that area and see if there's a place that's that calls for that kind of attention. I wish I know we've done more than that. I think around the Summit Street Bridge, I think we have some. Certainly if there are places where you as a bicyclist are having issues and you want to shoot those to me, we can certainly look at it, just like we do with any other comment from the public, we'll consider it. We don't want to have them too many places because we don't, we really want to call attention to those places where it's critical. But if you're noticing someplace that's a particular issue, feel free to send us a comment.
Sarah, don't we plan to install some on Rarit?
Do we? We have bike lanes on Rarit.
Okay.
It's not a big deal. I was
We're going to
just
be
curious
updating
about-
our bike lane signage on Rarit, but not the bike.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in the process of that.
I also just wanted to acknowledge, I really like the bikeway signs too. I know it's not like an infrastructure thing, but I feel like it does really make a more welcoming environment for cyclists, and it's kind of a nice guiding post. So I appreciate those as well.
Yeah, on these first ones, particularly because the target was kids, we kind of probably sign those a little more heavily than we would sign some areas. But yeah, I think it's a nice thing too, and because they look a little different from other signs that are along the roadway, I think they're helpful. That's another item that I can say, we had placed the order for those signs during COVID, during kind of the height of COVID, and because people weren't able to go to work and work in groups, we had to wait a long time for those signs. So it is interesting how this is affecting all of our work in different ways. And I just want to thank Liz again, Bike Iowa City, and we even put them on the back of the metro area trails map, is just, for anyone who doesn't know, is just, Liz, I always tell people you're knocking it out of the park. I mean, it just is so useful and really pushing the idea of, this Johnson County offers a lot of really unique and attractive bicycle opportunities. And if you're not following them on social media, if you haven't looked at their website, I really strongly encourage that you do that, because yeah, you're doing great work. Anything else?
Well,
Again,
this,
go ahead.
will this recording be posted, Sarah?
Yeah, we
Facebook
will
page?
get it posted
Okay.
on the MPO page, and I would think that Iowa City would post it on their page. Sadly, I do not have my calendar in front of me. This group might be interested. Do you remember when our Easy on the Gas Zoom session is? I think it's June 15th. We're going to be doing a Zoom session, a little different than bikes, but there's some real opportunities for people. For those of you that don't know, every day in Johnson County, we exchange about 10,000 people either way, coming into the county or coming into Johnson County from other areas for work, and an equal number of people leaving Johnson County. So we have a large number of people for whom bicycling and Iowa City Transit are not really an option that they can use. But there are some really interesting options that have become available, and we're going to be talking about that on this Easy on the Gas webinar, which I believe is on June.
Yes, it's June
Yes.
15th.
It'll be a
at
noon. It'll be another
Yep.
noon session, and Emily and I are really excited about it. So if you know anybody that is struggling to get to work, a distance that's impractical to reach by bike and that isn't served by transit, it might be a session that's really useful to them. Anything else?
I'm not seeing any other questions,
Okay.
Sarah.
Well, by all means, if things come up later, if you have questions, concerns, for sure, shoot me an email. I might not get to it that day, but I will definitely get back to you.
All right.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.